The grand halls of the Verma estate shone with opulence, and the faint scent of roses mingled with the aroma of fine cuisine as chandeliers sparkled, casting reflections across polished marble floors, and the laughter of guests echoed through the cavernous rooms, masking the dark undercurrents that simmered silently within the family walls. At the heart of this world of luxury stood Aarav, the only son of Chandrasekhar Verma the patriarch, whose pride in his son was only rivaled by the vastness of his fortune, and Aarav, who had grown with love and care, believed in the loyalty of those around him, thinking that family was synonymous with trust. Yet in the shadowed corridors, eyes watched him with envy and hearts schemed with greed. The cousins whose smiles were lined with cunning plotted in silence, the servants whose loyalty was bought whispered their secret ambitions, and even close relatives who shared blood but not honor waited patiently for the right moment to strike. Aarav moved through the estate unaware of the web of betrayal tightening around him. He greeted relatives with warmth and respect, never noticing the subtle glances exchanged or the quiet whispers that followed his steps in the gardens. He walked speaking to flowers as if confiding in them his joys and dreams, and the moonlight often found him at the balcony staring out into the city streets, imagining a future where love and kindness would prevail. But fate was cruel, and the very hands he trusted were the ones that would orchestrate his downfall. On a night that began with laughter and promises of celebration, Aarav was summoned to a private dinner, one that was meant to honor him, a gathering that seemed filled with warmth and familial affection. The table was lavishly set, the finest china gleaming under the soft glow of candles, and the aroma of delicacies filled the room. Yet beneath this veneer of civility lurked treachery, disguised in smiles and polite words. Vikrant, his cousin, approached with a charm that could mask malice, his eyes cold and calculating as he whispered congratulations in Aarav's ear while the patriarch toasted to his health and prosperity. Aarav felt a twinge of unease that he quickly dismissed, believing in the goodness of family. The wine was poured rich and deep red, glistening in the candlelight, and as he lifted the glass to his lips he did not realize that it carried death within its depths. The taste was deceptively sweet, masking the bitterness of poison. As the world began to tilt and shadows crept over his vision, Aarav's heart pounded with confusion and fear. His breath came in ragged gasps, and he clutched at the table for support. His mother Sarika, who sat nearby, noticed his sudden pallor, her heart leaping with alarm as she reached out, calling his name, her voice trembling with a mother's instinctive dread. Yet the family watched in silence, some with concern, others with cruel satisfaction, as Aarav stumbled trying to speak, his words failing to form coherent sentences. The laughter that had filled the room now seemed distant and hollow. He saw Vikrant smirk, the smugness of one who believed victory was already his. The betrayal cut deeper than any blade, and in those moments of panic and helplessness, Aarav realized the enormity of what had been done. The very people who had promised love and protection had conspired to end his life for greed and ambition. The world blurred around him. Visions of his childhood flashed, memories of laughter in the gardens of this very estate, the stories his father told of honor and family, the embrace of his mother, her soothing voice, all collided with the horror of the present. He fell to the floor, his vision darkening, the chandelier above spinning and refracting light like cruel stars, mocking his helplessness. And yet amidst the terror a clarity emerged, a single thought that would define the eternity. He was about to enter revenge and justice for the life stolen from him. The darkness took him finally and completely, but it did not silence the fire in his soul. Death claimed his body, but not his will, not his memories, and in the silence of the afterlife he held onto the image of betrayal, the faces of those who had plotted against him, their smiles that hid hatred, their words that masked deceit, and he swore an oath in that eternal space that he would return, not as the naive boy they had destroyed, but as an instrument of their reckoning. As he felt himself drawn from the void of death into the innocence of a newborn body in a distant village far from the Verma estate, his soul filled with a new resolve, a rebirth that carried both pain and purpose. He opened his eyes to sunlight and the warmth of a simple home, a place untouched by wealth or betrayal. Yet his memories were intact, the poison, the laughter, the smirk of Vikrant, the tears of Sarika, all burned within him, forming a foundation of unyielding determination. As he grew he learned to mask the rage, the sorrow, the longing for vengeance behind the innocent smile of a child. He observed the world, studying human nature, understanding motives and desires. The rebirth had given him a gift, the wisdom of experience, the clarity of purpose, the ability to see the darkness in hearts. And yet he also felt the gentle touch of life, the kindness of strangers, the comfort of a mother's love. In this new life he was named Arjun, and he bore the duality of his existence, the lessons of suffering and the tools for retribution. And every night when the stars shone bright he whispered to himself the oath he would never break, that one day the Verma family would feel the weight of the betrayal they had committed. The city and the mansion where he had been killed became more than memories, they became the blueprint of His revenge, every street, every room, every shadow he had once walked through was etched in his mind, and as he grew older he honed his body and sharpened his mind, mastering skills and strategies that would allow him to return as more than a man, as a force that could dismantle the lives of those who had stolen everything from him. And yet amidst this preparation he nurtured compassion, and understanding the innocence of his rebirth reminded him that revenge was not merely punishment, it was justice. It was the rectification of a wrong that had torn apart his soul, and every time he closed his eyes he saw Sarika's face, her tears mixing with hope and despair, and he promised her in silence that he would restore what was lost, that he would make the Verma family pay in ways they could not anticipate, that he would rise from the ashes of betrayal and claim the life that was stolen with a precision and patience that only one who had lived death could master. And so the years passed, and Arjun grew in strength and wisdom and cunning and subtlety, preparing the moment when he would step into the world of wealth and deceit once more, wearing the mask of an innocent young man while carrying the heart of a son betrayed and murdered for greed. And as he stood on the threshold of adulthood he felt a surge of anticipation and determination, knowing that soon he would return to the Verma estate, not as the boy who was naive and trusting, but as a storm of calculated justice and the fire of vengeance, ready to dismantle the world of those who had thought they could destroy him without consequence. And in that singular purpose his heart found a strange peace, a peace born not of forgetting but of the certainty that his life and death and rebirth had prepared him for the sweet reckoning that would one day come. And in the quiet of night, as the wind whispered through the trees of his new home, he closed his eyes, imagining the Verma estate, the faces of the family, the moment when he would reveal himself, the culmination of years of patience and the embodiment of the promise he had made, the promise that every betrayal would be repaid, every tear shed by Sarika avenged, every smirk of Vikrant turned to horror. And in that vision he smiled the first time, not as a boy but as a son reborn, with purpose and the certainty of sweet revenge in his heart, knowing that one day the poison they had given him would return to them 100-fold in the most exquisite manner. And that thought carried him into the depths of sleep and dreams, where he envisioned the future and the triumph that awaited him when the time was right, and the world would see that betrayal is never forgotten, and the heart of a son, even in death, can rise stronger, wiser, and deadlier than those who would dare destroy him. Arjun grew in the simplicity of his new home, surrounded by fields and forests and the gentle love of a mother who raised him with care and warmth, yet he carried within him the memories of a life stolen, the laughter of the Verma estate, the treachery of those who had called themselves family, the poison in his veins, the horror in his eyes, and the pleading tears of Sarika that haunted his soul. Every moment of childhood was infused with lessons of resilience, patience, and observation, for Arjun knew that the life he had been given was not ordinary. It was a second chance, a gift, and a responsibility to prepare for the reckoning that would one day come. And from the moment he could walk, he explored the world with curiosity and caution, feeling the pulse of life around him, the rhythm of people, their desires, their weaknesses, their secrets, and he observed how trust could be both a blessing and a weapon. The villagers grew fond of the child who smiled despite hardships, who helped the elderly, and who tended to animals with gentle hands. But even in acts of kindness there was a calculating mind at work, a mind that remembered and never forgave. Yet he also learned the beauty of life, the soft breeze on a summer morning, the way sunlight danced on river water, the fragrance of jasmine at dusk, the laughter of friends, simple pleasures that reminded him why he had to survive, why he had to become strong, so that one day justice would be served. Every lesson of life became a stepping stone for Arjun. He learned to read people before they spoke, to sense deceit before it was enacted, to master patience, for revenge was not impulsive but precise. He trained his body, climbing trees, running through fields, swimming in rivers, wrestling with boys who challenged him, learning strength, agility, and endurance. And his mind became sharper, devouring books, stories, philosophies, anything that could give him insight into human nature and power and strategy. He learned languages, the arts of persuasion and negotiation, and the subtle ways of influence and manipulation. Every skill acquired was a tool for the day he would face the Verma family again. And while others played, he studied life. He observed interactions, he catalogued behaviors, he noticed patterns and learned weaknesses. He understood that knowledge was more potent than brute strength, and that subtlety could break empires if wielded correctly. Yet amidst this rigorous preparation he also nurtured compassion. The memory of his mother Sarika and the warmth of his adoptive mother reminded him that his soul must remain uncorrupted, for revenge was not hatred alone, it was justice, it was restoration, and he would not lose himself to the darkness that had consumed the Verma estate. He forged friendships, but never too close to reveal his past identity. He smiled with peers, but always held a quiet intensity in his eyes, a promise that he was destined for something beyond ordinary life, and as he approached adolescence he began to experiment with leadership, influencing others, guiding situations subtly, always testing boundaries, always observing reactions and learning responses. He saw that power was not merely wealth, it was perception. It was control, it was the ability to bend events to one's will without overt force, and he honed this skill with the patience of a master sculptor shaping a future masterpiece. And as he grew older, his intellect and cunning became formidable, his body stronger, his patience deeper, and his resolve unshakable. Every night he replayed the memories of Aarav the son, betrayed the boy, poisoned the young man who had loved his family and been destroyed by them, and he vowed in silence that the Verma family would not know the hour nor the method of their reckoning, only that it would be perfect, inevitable, and just. And in these meditations he learned to control emotion, to channel anger into strategy, to transform grief into motivation, to mold love into a weapon that would cut precisely where it mattered. The world outside his village began to change as well. The city he had once known grew older, and so did the Verma estate, yet their arrogance remained untouched. They believed themselves untouchable, that the boy they had killed was gone forever, unaware that Arjun was growing in the quiet countryside with all the memories of his former life and a mind refined by study and experience. As he matured, he also discovered a talent for business and social influence. He learned how money could move people, how alliances could be forged and broken, how power could be inherited, manipulated, and redirected, and he understood that in order to confront the Verma family he would need more than strength or strategy. He would need influence, a position that could penetrate their world without suspicion, and he began laying the foundation, planting seeds years in advance, learning about investments, trade, society, politics, and the intricate dance of reputation and prestige. He cultivated relationships with mentors who believed in his vision and allies who were unaware of the storm that hid beneath the young man's calm demeanor. And yet through all this preparation he never forgot the personal element of his mission. He never forgot the night of poison, the laughter that masked murder, the smirk that had shattered his trust, the face of his mother in despair, the joy of relatives who had thought themselves victorious. And he used this memory as both compass and fire. His mind became a labyrinth of strategy, scenarios, contingency plans, simulations. Every possible move of the Verma family anticipated, countered, and rehearsed until he could play out decades of decisions in minutes of thought. And with each passing year the duality of his existence became more pronounced. To the outside world he was a simple village boy, a charming adolescent, a bright student, a polite young man, yet within him burned the life of Aarav the son betrayed, and the resolve of Arjun the strategist, the predator, the son reborn for vengeance. And every success in school and society and skill mastery was not just achievement, it was a building block, a preparation for the moment when the scales would finally tip and justice would be delivered. And in these years he also wrestled with the concept of morality, balancing the human kindness he felt for the innocent against the ruthless necessity of punishing the guilty, and he concluded that one could be compassionate and yet precise in punishment, that revenge did not require cruelty for its own sake, it required timing and intelligence, and he trained himself to act with perfect balance, to strike only where deserved, and to protect those who were innocent yet so intertwined in the web of corruption that they might suffer without guidance. And as he neared adulthood his appearance began to mature into the form of a man who could command respect, the years of training shaping him into someone confident, strong, composed, and intelligent. He began to travel beyond the village, visiting cities, studying commerce, observing society, noting patterns of wealth, influence, and power. The world became his classroom, his experiences a gallery of insights, and he returned each time to the village to refine his understanding, to meditate on his purpose, to sharpen both body and mind. And every night when he lay beneath the stars he spoke to the memory of his mother Sarika, the warmth of his adoptive mother, the treachery of Vikrant, and the laughter of the Verma estate in ghostly echoes, reminding him why he survived, why he trained, why he waited. And as he approached the age when he would return to the city, he began to practice the art of disguise and reinvention, crafting the persona that would allow him to infiltrate the world of the Verma family unnoticed, a persona that would be respected, admired, and trusted. The brilliance of Aarav masked beneath the calm exterior of Arjun, the village boy who could conquer hearts and minds alike. And throughout all this the oath never wavered, the promise that those who had taken his life would pay, that every betrayal would be returned in kind, every sin balanced by justice, that he would reclaim not only his inheritance but the dignity stolen from him, and the life they had tried to erase from history would be remembered through his actions. And in the quiet moments when he felt doubt he looked to the skies, remembering the night of death, the moment of betrayal, the eyes of his mother, and he felt the fire within reignite stronger than ever, fueled by sorrow, love, memory, and determination, and as he stood on the precipice of adulthood, he finally felt ready. The years of preparation, the countless hours of training, the strategies perfected, the relationships cultivated, the knowledge accumulated, all coalescing into a single purpose: a life reborn, not for ordinary success, but for extraordinary justice. And the world would soon learn that the boy they had killed had returned, and he was no longer powerless, that the heart of Aarav the Son betrayed the soul of Arjun, the strategist, and the patience of a man who had lived death had merged into a force unstoppable, precise, inevitable. And as he looked at the horizon beyond the village, the city that had once been his home, and the mansion that had once been his prison, he smiled, for he knew that the time would come when the Verma family would taste the weight of betrayal returned upon them, multiplied and sweetened by the patience and intelligence of the son they had thought dead. And in that knowledge he found peace, a calm before the storm, a serenity born of certainty, a preparation for the day when revenge would no longer be a dream but reality, a fulfillment of the promise that life and death and rebirth had given him. And in the stillness of the night, Arjun closed his eyes and whispered the oath once more, never forgetting, never forgiving, never stopping, until the Verma family understood that a son betrayed and murdered could rise stronger, wiser, and deadlier than anyone could imagine. And that thought carried him into the darkness of sleep and dreams, where every scenario was rehearsed, every consequence anticipated, every betrayal accounted for, until the day when Arjun would return, not as the boy who had been poisoned, but as the man who would reclaim all that was stolen and ensure that justice would be served and the memory of betrayal would never fade. Arjun stepped into the city, a young man carrying the grace and confidence of one who had been forged by years of preparation, and while to the world he appeared as a charming, intelligent, and ambitious entrepreneur, beneath the surface burned the soul of Aarav the Son, betrayed and murdered, whose memories of poison and treachery shaped every thought and every action. He moved through the streets of the city, observing the Verma estate from a distance, recalling every corner, every corridor, every hidden alcove, every echo of laughter and betrayal that had once defined his life. And now, as Arjun, he began to craft a new identity, one that would allow him to approach the Verma family unnoticed, a persona polished, elegant, and intelligent, someone who could command attention and respect without arousing suspicion. He studied the business ventures of the Verma empire, the allies they kept, the enemies they feared, the rivals they envied, and he learned the weaknesses that lay beneath their arrogance. And in each interaction, each meeting, each handshake, he planted seeds of influence, subtly guiding events, manipulating perceptions, shaping reality in ways that would slowly weaken the foundation of their power. And as he entered the social circles of the elite, he observed the family in detail, noting their habits, their desires, their vulnerabilities, the way Vikrant still smirked with arrogance, unaware that the boy he had once killed now stood mere feet from him, the precision of their behavior, the duplicity in their smiles, the ignorance that they were about to be ensnared in a web they could not see. And Arjun took meticulous notes, every gathering, every word, every gesture analyzed, catalogued, and stored in his mind to be used at the perfect moment. He cultivated friendships with people who could become allies or instruments in his plans, never revealing his true intentions, yet subtly shaping loyalties and opinions through charm, intelligence, and insight. He observed Sarika too from afar, her aging beauty a reminder of the warmth and love he had lost, and yet a source of inspiration for the revenge he sought. He saw how she still mourned, how she still carried the grief of her lost son, and he vowed that the reckoning would also honor her suffering. And his every move was deliberate, every smile, every compliment, every gesture calculated to draw the Verma family deeper into the illusion that they were untouchable, that the boy they had destroyed was gone forever, and yet he was already among them, already weaving a network of influence and anticipation that would allow him to strike with precision when the moment was right. He acquired investments, partnerships, and positions that gave him legitimacy and access to the Verma empire, and at the same time he sowed tiny doubts, whispers of incompetence, small betrayals orchestrated with subtlety that slowly eroded the confidence and unity of the family. As he watched from the shadows, the cracks began to appear, cracks in their alliances and their trust in their self-perception, and Arjun's satisfaction grew quietly like a flame feeding on patience and strategy. He attended galas, dinners, and events under the guise of curiosity and ambition, studying reactions, analyzing body language, noting which words caused discomfort, which gestures revealed guilt, and slowly he began to manipulate situations to create tension and conflict that would later explode into full revelation. He charmed friends and rivals alike, creating a web of influence that extended to the very core of the Verma empire. And each time he saw Vikrant or other members of the family, he studied their expressions, noting the subtle hints of recognition, the flicker of suspicion, the unease that he planted without revealing his true identity. He tested the waters carefully, gauging reactions, learning who could be manipulated, who could be coerced who would crumble first, and he refined his strategies constantly, adjusting for human error, unexpected behaviors, and the unpredictable nature of life. And while he maintained the persona of Arjun, the bright young entrepreneur, he also honed his appearance, speech, mannerisms, and social skills to perfection, ensuring that he would be accepted, trusted, and admired, while hiding the fury of Aarav the Son betrayed and the calculating intelligence of Arjun the man reborn. For revenge he gathered information about the Verma finances, their investments, debts, assets, and allies, creating detailed maps of influence and power that he would later use to dismantle them piece by piece. He discovered old skeletons, secrets, hidden deals, lies within lies, betrayals upon betrayals, and each revelation became a tool, a weapon to be used when the time was right. And as he moved closer to the heart of their empire, he orchestrated situations that caused small embarrassments, miscommunications, disputes, all seemingly natural events, yet subtly guided by his hand. And he watched the seeds grow, feeling the anticipation of the day when the culmination of years of strategy and patience would come to fruition. He built trust with those around Vikrant and other family members, creating the illusion that he was harmless, intelligent, and dependable, while actually laying the groundwork for their eventual downfall. And he observed Sarika closely, attending charity events or social functions, noting the mixture of pride and sorrow in her eyes when she glanced at him, a strange familiarity that she could not place. And he felt the pangs of love and guilt at the same time, for she was innocent and undeserving of the pain that lingered in her life. Yet his mission required precision and patience, and he reminded himself that every action, every conversation, every move must serve the ultimate goal of justice and revenge. And while others were distracted by superficial matters, by wealth, titles, and influence, he immersed himself in the intricacies of strategy, psychology, business, and social manipulation, knowing that power could be dismantled without violence if wielded with intelligence and foresight. And slowly he began to set the stage for the grandest act of his revenge, arranging meetings, partnerships, and events that would bring the family together in settings that appeared normal, elegant, and celebratory, yet were carefully designed to reveal truths and manipulate perceptions, to the point where the Verma family would feel powerless and vulnerable, unaware that the boy they had killed had returned as a man far more capable and determined than they could imagine. He studied every relative, every ally, every servant, noting who was loyal, who was corrupt, who would fold under pressure, who might resist, and he stored the information as if engraving it into the blueprint of the empire itself, for he knew that true revenge required complete understanding of the landscape of power and human weakness. And as the days passed, the Verma family began to feel subtle shifts in their world. Small disruptions in business, minor social embarrassments, unexpected setbacks that they could not explain, while Arjun remained above suspicion, calmly observing and gently pushing events toward his ultimate objective. And each evening he reflected on the journey from the poisoned wine to the boy of the countryside, to the young man now standing among the elite with all the knowledge, skill, and patience necessary to reclaim what was stolen and punish those who had betrayed him. He felt the fire of Aarav the Son murdered, blending with the calm intelligence of Arjun the strategist, creating a force unstoppable, precise, and inevitable. And he rehearsed scenarios in his mind, imagining confrontations, conversations, revelations, each one carefully orchestrated, each one designed to maximize impact with minimal risk to innocence. And he reminded himself constantly that revenge was not chaos, it was justice, executed with intelligence and patience. And as the day approached when he would finally confront the Verma family, he tightened his control over the network of influence, allies, and perceptions he had built, spent countless hours perfecting every aspect of his persona and strategy. And every night as he looked at the city skyline or the mansion in the distance, he whispered to himself the oath he had carried from the night of betrayal, the promise that every smirk, every whispered plan, every act of treachery against him would be repaid tenfold. And he envisioned the perfect revelation, the moment when the family would recognize him, the son they had killed, reborn and transformed into a force they could not resist nor ignore. And he felt satisfaction knowing that the years of patience, the rigorous preparation, and the careful orchestration of events would culminate in the sweetest justice imaginable. The reckoning would not be violent without need, it would be elegant, precise, devastating, and irreversible. And in the quiet of his room at night, Arjun allowed himself a brief smile, recalling memories of childhood innocence juxtaposed against the cunning and skill of the man he had become. And he reaffirmed his commitment to the plan, to the oath of vengeance, to the promise that the Verma family would pay for their crimes. And as he lay in bed imagining the gala events, the social functions, the perfectly timed revelations, the exposure of secrets, and the collapse of alliances, he knew that the culmination of his life would soon arrive, that the son they had betrayed would reclaim his life, his dignity, and his rightful place. And in that anticipation he felt both serenity and the thrill of the storm yet to come, and he slept with the knowledge that the web was complete, the stage was set, and the Verma family would soon feel the consequences of their arrogance and cruelty, and the patience of a son betrayed and murdered would finally be rewarded with the sweet perfect justice that only time, foresight, and relentless determination could achieve. And as dawn broke over the city, Arjun rose ready to continue the final steps of preparation, knowing that the night of reckoning drew ever closer, and that nothing would distract him from the fulfillment of the promise that had carried him through death, rebirth, and years of meticulous planning. And the Verma family, still oblivious to the storm approaching, continued their lives of arrogance and betrayal, unaware that the boy they had killed had returned to weave a tapestry of justice so exquisite and inevitable that there would be no escape, no denial, and no forgiveness. And in that certainty Arjun felt peace and focus, and the inexorable thrill of revenge fulfilled at last. The night of reckoning arrived, and the Verma estate gleamed with opulence and grandeur as chandeliers cast glittering reflections across polished floors, and the air smelled of fine perfumes, expensive wines, and the faint tension of anticipation, though to the family it appeared as just another gala, another gathering to flaunt wealth and influence. Little did they know that tonight their world would unravel, that the son they had killed, the boy they had poisoned, the one they had assumed was gone forever, stood among them, hidden in plain sight, as Arjun, a man of intellect, strategy, patience, and unyielding determination, every movement, every gesture, every word calculated to expose their arrogance and treachery, he entered the hall with the grace and confidence of a man who belonged there, yet whose presence would sow seeds of terror in hearts of the unsuspecting. And as he surveyed the room, the familiar faces of Vikrant the smug, expressions of relatives, the forced smiles of allies, all seemed frozen in time, a memory made living, and he noted every detail, every angle, every opportunity for revelation. And as he greeted the family with politeness, charm, and intelligence, subtle flashes of recognition passed through their eyes, small moments that sparked unease and doubt. The air vibrated with tension that they could not place, yet it settled deep into their subconscious, preparing them for the storm to come. Arjun moved among them, weaving conversations laced with hints, suggestions, and observations that planted the seeds of doubt, fear, and suspicion. Without revealing his true identity, he reminded them subtly of past failures, betrayals, and lies, the cracks in their empire, the missteps they had made in business and personal dealings were drawn into the light by implication and innuendo, yet masked in charm and courtesy. And as the evening progressed, Arjun revealed more direct evidence of corruption, deception, and cruelty. Orchestrated events that brought servants, allies, and outsiders into positions where they unknowingly exposed the family's secrets, their misdeeds, their betrayals, and the once proud family began to feel the walls closing in, their control slipping through their fingers, their arrogance giving way to panic and horror. They had believed themselves untouchable, that the son they had murdered was gone forever, that their lives and fortunes were secure, and yet every whispered doubt, every awkward glance, every misstep orchestrated by Arjun chipped away at their confidence and unity. And as the tension mounted, Arjun prepared the final revelation, the moment that would crystallize years of planning, patience, and cunning into the apex of justice. And as he stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent, all eyes on him, and he shed the persona of Arjun, the charming young businessman, and revealed the face of Aarav the son betrayed, the young man they had poisoned, the boy they had assumed dead. The gasp that swept through the room was a symphony of shock, horror, disbelief, and fear. Vikrant froze, his smug expression gone, replaced by raw terror and recognition. The relatives turned pale, their alliances faltered, their carefully maintained arrogance crumbled, and Sarika, tears streaming down her face, approached him, her eyes wide with awe, relief, sorrow, and disbelief, for she recognized her son not as a child but as a man, reborn with strength, intelligence, and purpose beyond anything she could have imagined. Arjun spoke calmly and clearly, outlining the crimes, the betrayals, the misdeeds of each family member, the evidence painstakingly collected over years, presented with precision and clarity, leaving no room for denial or excuses. He narrated the events of the past, the poisoned wine, the laughter that had murdered, the treachery that had ended his first life. And as he recounted each detail, the room became a theater of horror and realization. The family could not escape the truth. Their power, their wealth, their reputation disintegrated in moments under the weight of exposure. And as the evening progressed, Arjun revealed the intricate web of influence, manipulation, and strategy he had used to infiltrate their world, gain their trust, and dismantle their empire from within. And every revelation was paired with a calculated consequence, some social, some financial, some legal, designed to ensure that each betrayal was repaid, each sin confronted, each arrogance punished. And yet, despite the devastation, he maintained the elegance and calm of a master, orchestrating a symphony of justice. The guests and allies present witnessed the fall of a family that had once been untouchable, and Arjun ensured that those who were innocent or loyal to truth were spared or aided, while those who had contributed to the suffering were confronted directly and made to face accountability. And as the final moments of the gala approached, the Verma family could only stand in disbelief and terror at the magnitude of the son they had wronged, returned not with blind fury but with precise and unerring justice. Every smirk, every lie, every whispered betrayal repaid tenfold, yet not with cruelty for its own sake, but with the perfection of timing, intelligence, and consequence. And as the dust of revelation settled, Arjun turned to Sarika, holding her hands, her tears flowing freely of relief and pride, and he whispered to her that the justice long awaited had been delivered, that the son murdered was now vindicated, and that the family that had sought to erase him from history would never forget the consequences of their actions. And in the aftermath of the gala, the empire that had once symbolized arrogance and betrayal lay in ruins. Legal investigations, financial collapse, and social ostracism ensured that those who had lived by treachery now faced the reality of accountability, and the world watched in awe as the son, once poisoned, murdered, betrayed, and reborn, had orchestrated the downfall of a powerful dynasty without violence, beyond what was necessary to reclaim justice and dignity. And in the quiet of his own thoughts, Arjun reflected on the journey from the poisoned wine to rebirth, to meticulous preparation, to ultimate reckoning. He understood that revenge had been more than punishment, it had been restoration, the restoration of truth, honor, dignity, and the balance of justice that had been disrupted decades ago. And as he stood on the balcony of the Verma estate, the city lights flickering like stars in the distance, he felt a calm serenity mixed with the thrill of triumph. He had honored the memory of the son, betrayed the teachings of patience and strategy, the love and grief of Sarika, and the promise of justice itself. And he knew that though the family had fallen, the world would remember that betrayal has consequences, that a son, though poisoned and killed, could rise stronger, wiser, and deadlier than those who would dare destroy him. And in the silence of the night, as the wind whispered through the estate and the city hummed below, Arjun felt the weight of closure settle upon his shoulders, a peace born not of forgetting but a fulfillment of purpose, of vengeance executed with intelligence, patience, and justice. And he smiled for the first time, not as a boy filled with naivety and trust, but as a man perfected by experience, rebirth, and strategy, a man who had ensured that betrayal never goes unpunished, and that the legacy of love, loss, and vengeance would be remembered forever. As he looked toward the horizon, the stars shining above reflecting his journey, he whispered a final oath to himself that the lessons of betrayal, the power of patience, and the sweetness of justice would guide him always. And as he turned from the balcony, he knew that the Verma family would never recover from the reckoning. The truth had been revealed, the son they had murdered had returned, and the scales of justice had been balanced. And in that moment he felt complete, alive, vindicated, and prepared for whatever the future might hold, for he had proven that life and death and rebirth could forge a soul capable of perfect and sweet revenge, and that no betrayal, no matter how cruel, could destroy the heart and mind of a son reborn with purpose, determination, and love as his guide. And the Verma estate, now silent in the wake of revelation, stood as a monument to the consequences of treachery and the triumph of patience, intelligence, and vengeance. And Arjun knew that he had fulfilled the promise he had carried since the night of poison, the oath that had shaped every decision, every action, every moment of his reborn life. And with that certainty he stepped into the dawn of a new era of his life as Aarav the son betrayed Arjun, the man reborn and master of the sweetest and most perfect revenge the world had ever witnessed.